What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. The full Season 5 patch notes have come out. Some incredibly radical and heavy-handed hero changes, new game modes, and quality of life updates. I love today's video sponsor because I'm a paying customer myself. Factor is perfect for me because in the last few years, I lost 65 pounds on the keto diet, but still love fast food, I have to admit. And after trying Factor, I signed up because it's everything I could have asked for. It's super easy. You poke a few holes in the package and 2 minutes in the microwave and bam, you got dinner. They have keto or other dietary options, but no matter what you choose, I guarantee you'll be blown away like I have been because the quality of the sauces and seasoning they put in everything makes the meals have a burst of flavor. Really, really good. Factor is an easy auto include for your IRL build. It's the best in slot meal subscription bar none. Last week grinding Diablo, it came in the clutch then, and now this week with Overwatch 2 Season 5, I really don't have time to cook. To try it out yourself, take our link in the description to go to gofactor75.com. Use code POG, YOWJUN50 for 50% off your first box. Once you click, my description will live update to count up the purchases. You gotta taste it to believe it. Try out Factor today. Kicking it off, welcome to Season 5. Join Tracer and her friends as they embark on an adventure in a fantasy-themed role-playing game. As you progress through the battle pass, you'll guide Tracer while she works to save the magical kingdom of Overland from the threat of Demon Lord Reinhardt, and become a powerful knight as you unlock her mythic adventurer skin. More fun awaits in Season 5, including our first ever creator-made workshop game mode in the arcade, the return of summer games, and introducing Mischief and Magic, Overwatch 2's prop hunt game mode. General updates, challenges. Lifeweaver's Unlock Challenge has been added, and updates to challenges where now incomplete weekly challenges will no longer reset to 0. 100% of the progress made in weekly challenges in previous weeks will be kept and carried over. All weekly challenges requiring wins have been converted to complete games. Wins grant double progress. The change results in the required amount of wins becoming higher, but the average total number of games needed to complete the challenges has not. The On Fire system has returned. New and improved. Fire returns to highlight your incredible plays with these new features. There's a new state called Blazing. What's better than being on fire? Being even more on fire. A team's most exceptional playmakers will now begin blazing. Blazing cannot be maintained as easily as regular fire, so you'll need outstanding play to keep the heat on. Reignited visuals and sound effects. Fire returns to the hero portrait and the scoreboard with new animations. Fire makes its debut in the kill feed as well. There's a new thing called Catching Fire, where killing enemies that are on fire grants fire. Now just keep in mind, this is all just aesthetic, visual feedback to make you feel better about making a play, but this one in particular feels quite rewarding. So if you're finally the one to kill the Nano Blade, even though you lost a team fight, at least you get a little bit of fire to make yourself feel better about it. One more bit about the on fire mechanic. This is called Fan the Flames. The fire has spread to more than just Genji players. Beyond eliminations and damage, fire comes from mitigated damage, saves, healing, assists, capturing or contesting objectives, boosted damage, and crowd control. Pay attention to which heroes on your team are on fire and help them out to increase your fire score. Matchmaking. Honestly, I'm gonna skip this section because anything they write in these matchmaking update sections is very hard to feel a tangible improvement usually, and it gets mixed up with things they're planning long-term that they mention. So a lot of the things they said they were going to add are finally adding, but I know they're also doing more down the line. Just expect with each update, there's going to be some matchmaking improvements. It should create matches with narrower range of player skill. It now prioritizes placing similar groups with wide skill ranges into the same match, trying to avoid solo players being in that match, and other bug fixes. An important competitive play update, ranked inactivity changes. Players that did not play any matches during the previous competitive season will be inactive. Inactive players do not have a visible skill tier and division. Each role in role queue can become inactive separately, while in open queue, a player has one rank that can become inactive. Once an inactive player returns and achieves a competitive update after winning 5 games, their skill tier and division will become visible again. While I understand their thought process with this, I also think a player who doesn't have a visible rank is also a bit of a telltale sign of a type of player. But luckily, since you can hide your profile anyway, your teammates may not know that you've been an inactive player. And of course, with any inactive player, it's very tough for the matchmaker to ever never be accurate, because who knows if you just pick up Widowmaker again after you've been playing Apex and you can click heads like nobody's business. Well, maybe not in this patch. Remember, she's getting nerfed, but you get the point. Or if you forgot how to play Reinhardt and all of a sudden now you're a rank or two below in performance and are getting clowned in a Junker Queen meta or something, right? Those things happen all the time. So being inactive radically changes what your performance will be. So even if you were accurately placed before, you're likely not anymore. Sadly, the only way for the rank system to fix that is for you to play more. Only so much guessing it can do with how good you are after taking a break. Next section, competitive mystery heroes. Competitive mystery heroes returns for an entire season of randomized hero action. The competitive challenges are also back, providing mysterious titles and competitive points. Now on to the hero updates. Junker Queen's Rampage ultimate cost increased by 15%, and Commanding Shout temporary health has been reduced from 200 to 150. The devs say the last round of Junker Queen changes increased both her sustained damage and self-healing. Hence, she ends up staying alive and in the fight longer, which was the intent, but naturally her ultimate charges much more quickly on average as a result. The passive Adrenaline Rush healing had become more potent and has been interesting for gameplay as it's tied to landing her abilities. To bring her survivability more in line, we're shifting some of the power out of Commanding Shout temporary health gained for Junker Queen herself. For me, I think a reasonable place for the devs to try to land Junker Queen is that she is playable at high tiers but not meta, but just understand that she's likely not going to be as effective as push button to deploy shield tanks for the metal ranks. There's no way that her design can compete with the natural team value of bubbling your teammate or the more approachable skill floor of a lot of the other tanks. For me, I think these nerfs at face value aren't the whole story, and it's really going to end up mattering what the rest of the game evolves into. Remember, there's some massive nerfs and reworks in this patch, and Junker Queen's viability, I think, matters more on what is played around her. Normally, any health change is massive, but since she has so much self-healing anyway, I'm not so sure I'm convinced the 50 health is a big deal. Getting your ultimate less frequently is a big deal, especially for Junker Queen, where that's a big percentage of her power, considering how many things in the game can counteract it. If it's too telegraphed like it has been in previous seasons, she could fall down the tier list pretty quick. Next up is Roadhog, whose Take a Breather gets an interesting bit of utility. It now amplifies healing received by 50% for 2.5 seconds after finishing Take a Breather. So after the full animation completes, you get a heal boost effect on yourself, similar to if Ana naded you. And keep in mind, I don't see any reason why an Ana nade wouldn't stack on this, unless they tell us there's some breakpoint where there's a max cap on the healing received idea. For example, there's a max on fortification in the game, but not on damage amp, which can scale infinitely. On this Roadhog change, the devs say we would like Roadhog to be even sturdier as he's an immobile tank with minor damage blocking ability. His self-sustainability is already quite powerful when alone, so this is more of a team-oriented change. Take a Breather briefly increasing healing received will enable the support heroes on Roadhog's team to help him recover more quickly. Keep in mind, you need Take a Breather to fully finish for this to take effect, and it lasts 2.5 seconds after using it, which I feel like is quite a long time. Look for big healing cooldowns to combo really well with this. Batiste's healing burst will really punish focus fire on Hog and on a nade as well, either stacking or prolonging on this effect. When not anti-naded, this will be some hilarious survivability in the front line. I'm not sure if it's to Orisa levels yet, but since it has natural fortification when in use anyway, it's kind of getting close to that. And there's a world where maybe he's even more tanky than an Orisa in the right matchup, at least when he's getting healed. The next change is a controversial one. Cassidy's magnetic grenade no longer has a maximum projectile travel range of 10 meters. Okay, that's fine. It was kind of crazy that it followed you through time and space. The projectile now magnetizes towards an enemy from 1.5 meters away and chases them for up to 1 second. So if you are running away, there's a limit to how far it'll go and how long it'll chase you. Great, all that seems fair. Impact damage has been increased from 0 to 10, so it does do some damage, but the explosion damage has been reduced significantly. It was 120, but goes all the way down to just 70 damage. So that'll be 80 damage with the nade overall. But interestingly, a nade and a headshot will still combo kill, at least a squishy target, but that's not the most interesting part of this change. Stuck targets now have their movement speed slowed by 30%, and stuck targets now are affected by a hindered status effect, interrupting and preventing movement abilities from being activated. The developers say the overall goals for Magnetic Grenade are to shift its use from purely damage into more of a utility and change its deployment behavior from a close range lock-on to more of an aimed projectile projectile that magnetizes if it gets close to an enemy target. This previous stuck banner text alert confused Tracer's pulse bomb message, so this mobility locking status effect is being referred to as hindered. What's a bit unclear to me at this point is what either counts as a movement ability or what will count. We weren't able to do exhaustive testing on the patch yet, and who knows what they might change their minds on, because this is the kind of thing that the rules change all the time. Tracer will slow down, making her a lot easier to have follow-up shots on her, and even maybe just fan the hammer on a lot of targets will be fine now. But does recall count as a movement ability? Does Ash's coach gun, it seemed like the bot I tested on wasn't able to coach gun away, but again, it's a bot. Does Moira's fade, which adds a mobility boost, but really is more of like a self-escape, does that count? The rules on this are going to be all over the place, whereas hack is kind of simple with the type of disable it is. You can't use your ability. There you go. Hindered is going to have a lot of exceptions, I feel. The good news is about the hindered status effect is it's going to require the player to hit up subsequent shots, and you can't just magnate Andy your way to get kills. So Junkrat players like me, we're going to have to actually learn how to aim a little bit. The slow and pseudo hack on the enemy's movement does make that easier. Overall, I would say this is a nerf for metal rank players and will be a buff for higher tier players because they've got the aim to execute the shots anyway, and having the pseudo hack effect is going to shut down a lot of duels in a surprising way. In the Overwatch 1 to 2 transition, Tracer became a big winner in the duel against Cassidy, but now with the hindered status effect, he's got a much better fighting chance. And even consider really mobile heroes like Winston's Primal Rage or Wrecking Ball. While you do need a bit more aim to land the magnade now, the utility of it is a lot stronger. So chaining subsequent CC on the same target is going to be a lot easier, which was a thing they tried to remove from Overwatch 1 to 2 and now put it back. So partnered with Sombra or Mei, Ana, Brig, characters with disables, magnade is now a very big asset to line up other subsequent CC, especially on bigger targets. The next change is to Hanzo, whose static arrow impact sound now plays for enemies, and the visual effect is now briefly visible to enemies when first deployed. And another nerf to his storm bow, the maximum damage has been reduced from 125 to 120, which is an incredibly important breakpoint because he used to be a bit of a brawl king because a full charged headshot would be able to do 250 damage, which is key against characters like Mei and Reaper, and normally he plays just outside of their effective range. The developers say the storm bow damage adjustment is a small but significant change so that heroes with 250 health won't be eliminated with one critical damage shot. We've also updated the sound and visual for when Sonic Arrow initially lands to give nearby enemies more awareness that the ability was used. Now, funnily enough, despite these nerfs, I think in the context of other things being changed, Hanzo oddly is a winner because Widow, I think, is destroyed in her patch notes. At least for the average player, Hanzo's a lot easier to use than her, at least at the skill floor, which I think will make sense when we get to her patch note. The next up is Mei, whose endothermic blaster gets a huge overhaul. The damage per second has been reduced from 100 to 55. Primary fire slow is no longer always at 40%. Instead, now it scales from 30 to 50%, giving you that sort of freeze up minigame that you used to have in Overwatch 1. Although it won't fully freeze them into an icicle, it does build up a slow. Primary fire impact now builds up to a slowing effect that sticks to the enemy target for 1.5 seconds and slows them for 75%. Secondary fire impacts can now detonate this new slow effect, dealing an additional 40 damage. The developers say this set of changes is intended to bring back some of the gameplay and feeling of Mei's primary fire used to have previously, though without the hard crowd control of a full freeze stun. As you're freezing a target, you'll see that they sort of get like a chilled effect on the silhouette. That's where you need to go for a headshot because it will, quote, explode the freeze on them, undoing the effect but adding extra damage and often a kill combo. One nice change about this is that now Mei no longer has a benefit to just blindly freezing away forever. You will have to eventually switch over to deal damage with their alternate fire, because before, the DPS of the freeze beam was so high, you could kind of just freeze away forever in a cleave in the brawl, adding a status effect for your team to follow up on the whole time. Now Mei is more of a self-sufficient damage dealer and sort of has that crafty duelist nature to her in certain matchups. While not as severe as the full icicle freeze from Overwatch 1, it's still pretty severe if this happens to you. Overall, just like the Cassidy change, while in a way they're adding more crowd control to the game to actually utilize it, that individual player will need to actualize it by hitting a shot. So it's only really effective for higher skilled players or ones that can hit the shot to begin with, because you can't just rely on the Magnade doing the damage for you or the freeze DPS doing the damage for you. So kind of a good thing, frankly. But I'm curious if there's some situations where the build-up freeze is actually more effective to maintain it on the target as opposed to cashing it in for your own headshot. Because you can maintain that freeze on them forever. Yes, in a duel, you might want to cash in the headshot to eliminate them, but against a tank, this is just a more effective freeze than before. And so your team can now pummel into that tank even easier, lining up their headshots and other abilities. So while this is a nerf to lower skilled Mei play, it's a big buff to competent Mei play across all skill tiers in my opinion. And a nerf to tanks, because of course, it wouldn't be an Overwatch 2 patch if tanks didn't feel worse to play. But overall, I think a nerf to Mei, because the freeze beam goes from being like super effective, obnoxious, strong DPS, and team utility, especially for higher tiers where the focus fire is really good, to being kind of situational. The damage on it is low, and there's certain targets that you're not really going to gain a big effect from fully freezing, and in more cases, you might feel like it's more effective to just spam icicle ult fires, which probably is a good thing for the character overall. But conversely, I think where the freeze rate is good, it's like a bit better. But flexibility matters a ton. Frankly, while the Overwatch 1 full popsicle freeze effect was annoying, it also was kind of gimmicky, which is why now she has cleave and other aspects to her kit, right? Like it was kind of a lower tier mechanic to get caught by it. At higher skill tiers, alt fire is going to be the way to go now, I think. Next changes to Reaper. Wraith form can no longer be activated while affected by a mobility locking effect, such as Magnade, Steel Trap, Graviton Surge, etc. The devs say the Reaper and Moira changes are addressing an inconsistency with the interaction of Wraith form or Fade with mobility locking effects, such as Junkrat Steel Trap, Sigma's Grav Flux, Zarya's Grav Surge, and Cassidy's Magnade. Only the coolest Overwatch players understood every ability I just named in its shortened form. The post goes on, they are now disabled similarly to Tracer's Recall or Sombra's Translocator, which are abilities that also phase out and can move the player. This is actually like a huge nerf, because one of the major tanky, I can counter everything type aspects of some of these brawler type heroes was the fact that things just didn't work on them. So with coordinated play at higher tiers or just existing based play for meta rank players, these abilities were very oppressive. And overall, despite them in theory adding wacky crowd control ideas, on the whole, this is kind of adding up to make those brawly styles of play a bit harder to play than before, having more punishes, because Reaper and Mei or Mei and Cassidy were natural pairings. Characters in that team comp now have a higher degree of difficulty to get value out of and have bigger counterplay to them. I would say, at least for me, Reaper was a positive matchup against Cassidy until you get to the higher tier Cassidys where their aim was just too good. But for most Cassidy players, I felt quite easy to flank them and overwhelm them as Reaper. But now that Magnade shuts down your ability to Wraith form, that's an insane damage lockout, right? That's the reason why that you used to be able to run him over. So Reaper gets a huge nerf in that matchup. Another nerf to Tracer. This one's huge. Her spread has been increased by 15%, which is effectively a damage nerf as well as a range nerf, and really affects her ability on certain hitboxes to be able to one-clip something effectively. Considering Cassidy gained a buff against the matchup, I know Tracer was one of the top performing heroes, so it's surprising to see her go down here. Also as well, I suppose the snipers got nerfed, so maybe that's their thought process, that the best flanker needs to get nerfed too. The developers explain in saying, we uncovered a bug that was setting Tracer's maximum weapon spread smaller than intended. We'll be monitoring the results of this one closely, as fixing it may have a significant impact on her overall effectiveness. So supposedly just a bug change, but it's such a substantial nerf that, like, who cares if it was a bug or not? It was in the game, right? So it is a nerf. Next changes to Widowmaker. Widow's Kiss scoped shot damage fall off min-max range has been reduced from from 70 to 100 to just 40 to 60, which is tiny. The scope shot maximum damage fall off scaler has increased from 30 to 50%. The devs explain in saying these changes to Widowmaker's weapon fall off are intended to reduce her one-shot capabilities on maps with extreme long sightlines. The average range to eliminate a 200 health hero at full charge is around 50 meters. A fully charged critical shot will still eliminate 150 health targets regardless of range, and that's one target in the game. So, okay. Now, when you think back, Sojourn's ability to one-shot kill got reined in, but because of how chaotic the game is, her ability to lay down a bit of suppressing fire with her primary fire or a teammate following up, that turned out for at least a patch cycle to not be so efficient of a nerf. In some respects, you might think Widow can also follow up on this kind of tag with her submachine gun follow-up damage. But overall, since Widow only has 175 health and a big percentage of her gameplay would be like to take an advanced position and play certain angles and punish, maybe oppressively so, like spawns, gaining surprise angles that you really can't contest in Overwatch 2 as a team because there's only one tank. That's what made Widow really good. It's not just the medium range pickoff potential, because a lot of characters can get in medium range and get a kill. It's the extreme long range that I think made Widow special. So I'm going to assume this is quite a significant nerf for at least like 99% of players, because the skill you're going to need to get the same output at the ranges she can play, it sort of makes her feel redundant and just kind of a gimmick, because there's so many positions now you just simply can't take as Widowmaker anymore, and you got to play with the team a bit more. And if you got to do that, well, there's so many other characters that are better at that. That being said, there still are a lot of positions where she'll still be good. So it's gonna be map depending for sure, but certain Widowmaker spots, such as Havana, plays totally different now, both for the Widowmaker players and everyone else against them. PMA Jellies made a workshop mod that tests the range of this to visualize it more clearly, and I think this shows off some very important Widowmaker sightlines on her key maps. This will help you understand if Widow is going to be effective on these maps. And keep in mind though, because Widowmaker's biggest threat was an enemy Widow before, now both of them on each side will be reined in. And I think Hanzo will be a surprising winner on some of these maps because he'll be the sole character that can deal lethal damage at extreme ranges, though way less consistently than Widowmaker's hit scan rifle. On these extreme sniper maps, I bet Widow is still a top tier pick to play these certain angles, but not a must pick, which is probably a good thing for the game. Lifeweaver gets a series of buffs because his win rate is in the toilet. Full-time Twitch streamers can't even one-trick him to GM, and maybe you shouldn't do that, but no one's been able to do it? It's kind of a telltale sign that something's wrong with the character, right? Though as the devs have said, he's actually not so bad at the lowest skill tiers due to his reliable heal and how powerful just repositioning your team is. For everybody else, he needed a bunch of love, and he gets it here. General petal ornaments on his back have their size and hit volume reduced by 10%. Healing Blossom's maximum healing has increased from 65 to 75. Now that's a bit more of a serious number. It's the same amount that Ana heals, but hers is a heal over time and harder to hit. So that starts to give him a significant identity, but he'll need more in his kit probably to compete. Thorn Volley's damage per projectile has increased from 5 to 6, and the projectile radius has increased from 0.1 to 0.125, and ammo goes up from 60 to 70. I don't know about this. I think his weapon fundamentally is a bit corny. I mean, I think a lot of people think kunais from Kiriko are corny as well, but I love them, and at least they're a skill shot you have to like line up and be thoughtful about somewhat. Thorn Volley is really spray and pray, and I think I'd prefer more utility and less like Moira ability to duel. Let's see what else he gets. Petal Platform's walkable area has increased by 15%, and the area to trigger now shrinks from a radius of 2 to 0.75 meters after initial placement. This is actually taking direct feedback, I think, from the Group Up podcast. This will mean that the Petal Platform is harder to accidentally trigger by your teammates or yourself, and easier to stay on top of, though I'll admit I didn't really feel in testing that it was necessarily easier to not fall off of, but I was really testing the limits of these petals anyway. Life Grip now has a reduced cooldown from 20 seconds to 16, and it heals the target ally for 50 health. So that's another combination of heal increase for Lifeweaver, and to compensate, they did increase the ultimate cost by 8%. The developers explain these changes in saying Lifeweaver's stats have been improving over time, but he's still underperforming. These adjustments are primarily straightforward improvements to nearly every aspect of his kit, outside of his ultimate ability, which received a small cost adjustment for the increased healing and damage output. The pedal platform area shrinking is a quality of life change intended to help avoid accidentally activating the lift after it has been placed. Next up is Moira, who got the same nerf Reaper did. Fade no longer can be activated while affected by mobility locking effects, such as Magnade, Steel Trap, Grav Surge, etc. The devs say the Reaper and Moira changes are addressing an inconsistency with the interaction of Wraith Form or Fade with mobility locking effects such as Junkrat's Steel Trap, Sigma's Grav Flux, and we said all this earlier. An interesting map update. There's a few lighting effect maps changing, but Watchpoint Gibraltar has completely redesigned the final defender spawn area. From the forward defender spawn, there's a new exit route, and there was route adjustments and changes made around the first capture point outside the hangar, with cover and route adjustments made inside the hangar. Well guys, that's everything for today's video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please be sure to leave the video with a like, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.